Africa Prime, brought to you by Jameson's Select Reserve.
Welcome to this edition of Africa Prime. I'm Godfrey Mutizwa. Tonight we're taking a look at Zambia. Now that's a country that has seen momentous change with a change in government, with President Michael Sata coming in and defeating incumbent Rupia Banda of the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, who had ruled Zambia for the past 2 decades. Now, the man we have chosen to give us a look at how Zambia is performing now and what the prospects are is the CEO of Zanaco. Now, Zanaco is Zambia's largest bank by far. It's the biggest bank by branches, it's the biggest bank by the loan book, and it also has the most customers in the country and also the most credit cards. Martin, welcome.
Thank you.
Before we talk business, let's talk politics.
Sure.
When people talk about Zambia these days, we're talking about a country that has seen complete exercise of democracy. We've had a change in government, which is rare in Africa, and we also have a president who is coming and is very hands-on and has brought in sweeping changes. So while change is good, we do know that for business, change is not so good. How do you see the changes that have been taking place?
Well, first of all, I think you mentioned it correctly, Godfrey. It's a blessing that Zambia had elections which were peaceful. The coverage of the election also showed by international observers that it was open and transparent. And I think that Zambians should be proud of the fact that in their history since 1964, they've had 5 different presidents that have come in, and they've all been in peaceful transitions of power. So we're happy about that. There's been a change in government. It's been a resounding victory for the opposition party, the Patriotic Front, and President Michael Sata has done very well in the presidential elections and has now taken over power as per last Friday.
Now, we know that business people don't like change, particularly when it impacts the environment in which they operate. And when we see the headlines that have been coming out of Zambia, the central bank governor being asked to leave, we've got various other changes that have been taking place, a new finance minister, etc. From the view outside, it appears like things are changing and changing very, very rapidly.
Well, I'm not sure if that's entirely correct. Sure, you'll have a change of ministers as the opposition comes into power. I might point out also that the government, Patriotic Front, has also invited some MMD individuals, parliamentarians, to join the government. So I think it's been a balanced change. Change is different for many people. It's difficult at times as well, but change also brings opportunities, and I think that you'll see that with Zambia. There are a multitude of opportunities that I think will be supported by the new government as well.
What's your perception? Because as I said, when you look outside, we're seeing a country that is changing and changing very rapidly. Do you see big changes in terms of the economic policies that will be pursued by the new president, particularly in light of the manifesto that we saw when he was campaigning for the presidency?
I don't think so, from what I've seen so far, but we have to give the new government, they've only been in place now for less than a week, some time to settle in and to be able to enunciate the directions and their policies. What the government has already been quite clear about is that on the one hand, there will be continuation of economic policies in general. On the other hand, it's also clear that in the mining sector, they'd like to have a discussion with mining companies in Zambia to look at how to come towards a more win-win situation in terms of taxation regime for mining companies. Yeah. So we'll have to see how that transpires, and I think the government will probably take a gradual, measured approach to those discussions. Yeah,
I must point out, of course, that your bank is owned a quarter by the Zambian government, so you need to be careful what you're saying from me to the next question.
Not at all.
But the next question is going to be tricky for you, because I want to find out from you, as a banker, we have had the central bank governor replaced. We have a new guy who is coming in. The central banker who has been replaced was very well respected by the banking community in Zambia, by the international community, and there have been suggestions that what we could potentially see is a very different monetary policy regime coming into Zambia. We've already seen the first signs with the kwacha coming under pressure. When you look at it as an insider, what do you see?
Well, I'm not too concerned about the governor of the central bank being replaced. I've worked in numerous jurisdictions around the world as CEO, and I think that I've been impressed with the regulatory environment that the Zambian central bank has placed over banks and bank supervision in general. And that's not just the governor who determines that, that's his entire staff and the policies developed over time. So I'm pretty comfortable that's going to remain a structured, predictable an equitable approach toward the banking sector in Zambia going forward.
Yeah.
Regarding monetary policy, again, I think it's a little short, a little quick right now to have a commentary on what might potentially happen down the road as the government puts its policies in place.
But
so we'll wait and see.
But you do know, when we look at around the world, when we look at the big central bank governors, they do define the eras and times in which they operate. I mean, so we talk about the Greenspan era, we talk about the Bernanke era in the UK, and the King era in the UK, etc. So I suppose to a degree, markets had become comfortable with Caleb Fundanga.
I think that's correct. I think Governor Fundanga did a very good job in his tenure as governor of the central bank. It was predictable. It was understandable for outsiders as well as for players in the local market. Let's wait and see what the appointments will bring. I'm sure that the government will continue in a prudent path with regard to the economic policies and also bank supervision.
Wait and see, wait and see. Let's talk about the Zambian economy as an opportunity then.
Sure.
I mean, you are operating it. You lend to customers inside the country. You deal with customers from outside the country. What do you see as the main growth strength for the Zambian economy from here on? Of course, we know about copper.
Sure, copper continues to be an important mainstay of the Zambian economy, and as copper goes, so fundamentally does the local currency, the kwacha, go as well. So we have to be careful about that, particularly in light of macroeconomic developments internationally, as we see demand for copper slipping a little bit at the present time, therefore the price coming down somewhat over the last few weeks. From an overall perspective, outside of copper, I think that Zambia has a lot to offer. In the agricultural sector, I think it's one of the most arable countries in the world. The soil is excellent, the climate is superb. Zambia possesses about 40% of the water in the sub-Saharan African region, so there's plentiful water there. So we're very pleased as a bank also to support the agricultural sector, and we'll continue to do that quite aggressively in the coming years. Agriculture is one. I think number two, in manufacturing and construction, there's a lot of opportunities there. Tourism, I think Zambia has not been discovered as far as tourism is concerned by international travelers as much as the more common the destinations, Tanzania and South Africa. So I think there's a great deal of opportunity there as well. Yeah. So I think those sectors are growth sectors for Zambia.
And those sectors, interestingly, are sectors that a neighbor of yours used to be very strong in. We're talking, of course, about the southern neighbor, Zimbabwe. We do know that Zimbabwe used to have a very strong agricultural sector. It used to have a very strong manufacturing sector with goods coming out of Zimbabwe into Zambia. And we also, of course, when people spoke about the Victoria Falls, they were talking in relation to Zimbabwe, but now suddenly the shoe is on the other foot. Are you seeing a lot of business coming to Zambia rather than Zimbabwe, to a degree, if you like, because of the new stability that has been the hallmark for Zambia now in the last few years?
I think there's a lot of business that's coming to Zambia. For example,
for Zambia without
itself,
particularly maybe having been aimed for Zimbabwe.
That's correct. I'll give you an example. We're going to welcome a trade investment mission in November, which has chosen to come from Europe, Netherlands in this case particular, and to come to Zambia. But they've also said, no, we want to continue that trip into Zimbabwe. So I think international investors see opportunities in both locations. Clearly Zimbabwe has some other unique features which Zambia clearly does not have at the present time in terms of foreign direct investment and opportunities there. So that's why we're glad to welcome them to Zambia in particular. And I think they'll see those opportunities in the sectors I mentioned.
Yeah. Now, we spoke about your bank being the largest in terms of branches, in terms of the loan book, in terms of customers, in terms of cards issued. In terms of the growth sector of the financial services sector in Zambia, what sort of growth rates are you seeing? Just give us paint a picture for us.
Sure. Well, we've seen growth rates over the last 5 years on average of between 20 to 30%. So those are very attractive growth rates, and I think reflect, one, a growing economy in Zambia, two, a growing middle class, which is becoming more and more financeable, and three, I think, government policies put in place which make it attractive for economic growth to continue. So although there may be a slight slowdown, because 20 to 30% on average every year is a tremendous growth rate, we do anticipate that it's going to be still a very attractive place in which to do financial services, but also for the citizens of Zambia to grow along with the economic growth curve that's in place right now.
Yeah, of course we saw recently, we had the news that FirstRand's supposed proposed purchase of one of the Zambian banks has been reversed by the government that has just come in. What kind of an impact do you see that having on, say, someone who's been looking at Zambia as a potential place to come and set up business, maybe as a bank or as a lender, having on investment sentiment?
Well, you mentioned it earlier already, Godfrey. When you look at change in any regime, it brings uncertainty, and that brings perhaps a hesitancy of some investors to take the step that they anticipated doing. Let's see what actually transpired there, because frankly, within Zambia and the public sector, it's still an issue which has not been disclosed in public as to the reasons for all these changes. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the coming 2 weeks.
Yeah, but in terms of the sector itself in Zambia, in terms of perhaps opportunities for consolidation, do you see perhaps Zanaco playing a role in all of that?
Could be.
What opportunities are there?
There's always opportunities. At the present time, there are about 7 million bankable individuals in Zambia. The banking penetration ratio is only about 13%, so 13% of that number actually have bank accounts. Yet on that number, there are already 19 registered commercial banks and a number of microfinance organizations too. So you have to ask the question, despite the opportunity in terms of penetration of that market, would it be profitable for all of those banks to grow in that area? So we'll see how that pans out. I think there are increasing number of interested parties who want to enter Zambia and have done that, from African banks in particular. And they'll have to take it up against the more established both international banks, the blue banks, and the red bank, which I represent, which is Zanaco, which is the local bank.
Absolutely, Martin Schouten. And let's continue this conversation after the break. And when we come back, we'll try and take a look at who Martin is, where he's been, and where he's going. Do stay with us.